Hello and welcome to Theology Unleashed. I'm Arjuna, and this is the channel where Eastern theology meets Western skepticism. This is the first in a video series I'll be doing on karma. In this video, I'll be explaining the Hare Krishna concept of karma, and in subsequent videos, I'll be defending it against objections. I'll be primarily focusing on objections coming from Christians. I'll draw a lot on the work of Akshay Gupta, who's done a PhD dissertation covering the subject. This is also my first video using my new webcam, the Razer Kiyo Pro Ultra, or at least it would have been if I published this video a little sooner. This was recorded a few months ago and I've posted a few interviews since then. I'm retiring my old Sony a6000. So the reason for starting out by explaining what we mean by karma is that many of the objections offered against karma only land against particular conceptions of karma. The word karma is quite popular and most people have an idea what it means. But when we get into more specifics, we'll find that people have different ideas about it. The one theme that's common to all conceptions of karma is that our good or bad actions have consequences that come back to bite or benefit us, and that the mechanism that delivers this to us is not governed by ordinary physical laws. The conception of karma I'll be laying out and defending here is the one taught by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, a guru and representative of the Caitanya Vaishnava or Gaudiya Vaishnava teachings, a Vaishnava tradition that goes way back into ancient India. On this view, karma is a system of actions and reactions where we earn good or bad reactions based on the moral quality of the actions we perform. This means the good or bad things that life throws at us are our earned good or bad karma from past actions, either in this life or in past lives. A common misconception is that karma is fatalistic, meaning our life's course is determined by the karma which we have coming to us. This is not accurate, however. All karma is saying is that our choices have consequences, and that the things life throws at us, which are outside of our control, are the consequences for past actions. No one denies that life throws things at us, but karma has an explanation for why particular things happen to particular people. One way a fatalism objection can be framed is to say that karma is incompatible with free will because karma tells us that our life is determined by past karma. This objection contradicts itself in a way, because free will is the idea that our choices have consequences, and karma describes a cosmic mechanism for dishing out these consequences. But the real misunderstanding in these objections is thinking that karma plays a bigger role in our lives than it actually does. We all have an intuitive understanding of how much agency we have in our lives, of how much ability we have to change our lives for the better by working hard and aiming towards good goals. The version of karma I'm explaining here does not disagree with these intuitions at all. Another point to clarify is that this doctrine does not offer karma as the only reason why anything ever happens to anyone. There are other reasons things happen, such as God tailoring a specific situation to a devotee who's in need of just such an opportunity in their journey of purification and growth. This ties into the next point I want to make about how karma is not punitive, but rather is reformative. Many people miss this when they object to karmic doctrines. Karma is meant to teach us lessons that we, in particular, need to learn. The reason why I'm going through a particular experience and not someone else is because of where my consciousness is at and where it needs to be. These experiences are what I need to learn and grow, so it is a soul-building theodicy. But arguably, it has certain edges over Christian and Muslim soul-building theodicies. This is because it can explain why particular people are in the particular situations they are in. Opponents to karma use this as one of their core objections to the doctrine, however. I'm in full agreement that we should not blame victims for the situations they're in. But I do not agree that the doctrine of karma causes us to blame victims. Perhaps it does if you misunderstand karma and isolate it from other aspects of the view, such as dharma. I'll explain more about this in a future video dedicated just to addressing the victim blaming objections. But just quickly, this objection is addressed by things like extended compassion, meaning having compassion even for guilty people. by explaining how someone could be suffering for reasons other than karma, and by bringing in Vedic concepts like dharma. And when it comes to victims, our duty is many things, but it's never blaming. Karma is someone else's responsibility, not mine. So enforcing it by not acting out of compassion is a violation of dharma. So that's just a very quick summary of the responses, but I will steelman the objections and give more detailed responses in a future video. A lot of objections against karma ride on ideas like questioning whether we are in fact the same person if so many things about ourselves have changed, or whether we are the same person if we can't remember the past. Or is it fair to punish us without clearly telling us what it is we're being punished for, or without us being able to remember the thing we did which earned us that punishment? Now, there's a lot that can be said in reply to those kinds of objections, such as talking about theories of identity, or pointing out the fact that it's really not clear that remembering all the wrong things we've done in the past would be helpful. Often after we've done something wrong, we're quite mentally disturbed, and it's quite possible that retaining those memories clearly in our mind would continue such a disturbance. Two key words to focus on as themes from those objections are fair and punishment. Although karma is reactions for things we've done in the past, it's not best conceived of as tit-for-tat punishment. The best way to look at it is as reformative. This brings us on to explaining some Vedic ideas about the mind and reincarnation. There's a Sanskrit term, Samskara, which people who've studied yoga may be familiar with. The term means subtle impressions on the mind. Different experiences leave different impressions on our mind, and some are deeper than others. The deeper ones affect us more and are carried with us for longer. These samskaras, especially the deep ones, are carried from one lifetime to the next. And these samskaras shape our psyche, our underlying mentality. When I carry out a particular action, that action is caused by the mentality that I have at the time. Of course, our mentalities are always changing, and we are different people in a way at different stages of our life. But we tend to have core mentalities that we carry with us for very long periods of time, and even from lifetime to lifetime. Anyone who's been around small children knows how different they all are from one another. And the idea that these personality traits could be hangovers from past lives is not that far-fetched. The karmic reaction for a particular action is meant to reform the mentality that caused that action. And that, of course, is only fitting if the person receiving that reaction still has that mentality to some degree and is still in need of the reformation, which the karmic reaction is capable of facilitating. An example may be helpful here. Let's say somebody steals. The karmic reaction for stealing is to be stolen from yourself. And being stolen from is not a very nice experience. This could lead the person going through this to develop compassion for victims of theft to the degree where they no longer want to steal. There is another layer to this. It is described that one aspect of the karma for a particular action is an increase in the mentality which causes that action. Now that sounds like a contradiction of everything I've just said, but hear me out. With this added layer comes an added layer of experience, and the experience of going deeper into a rabbit hole of whatever the particular mentality is that a person has adopted could lead to the person growing so sick of the whole thing that they develop a deep and lasting desire to never have anything to do with that ever again. One example that illustrates this quite well is a story I heard of a small child who had an addiction for sweets. Anytime anyone would give her any sugar, she would just demand more and more and more. And finally one day, the parents bought her an entire bag of lollies and gave it to her. And they let her eat as many lollies as she possibly could. As you can imagine, eating that much sugar led to her feeling very sick. And what followed was a decline in her liking of sweets. I guess this brings us on to another key element of Hare Krishna theology, which is about how The real thing we're perfecting when we advance in God consciousness is the art of desiring. The difference between a great saint and a demon is how their desires are placed. The great saint desires the service of God and is filled with compassion and wanting to benefit others. Whereas the demon, the sinful man, is only desiring his own satisfaction and pleasure. How this relates to what I was just talking about mentality, is that the purpose of karma isn't to shape our mentality, it's to shape our desires. It's to make us give up our bad desires and switch to good desires. There's clearly a lot more that could be said on that point, but I want to keep this video short and to the point, and this is just a side topic. Dr. Howard Resnick has used the term cosmic sensitivity training to design the overarching purpose of karma. So when you put bad things out into the world, you're met with bad reactions, which encourage you to give them up because, like I said, when you steal, you figure out, oh, stealing sucks, and maybe that's not the kind of world I want to create. And when you put good things out into the world, you're encouraged to do more of that. I believe there's research that shows that people who've suffered in their life tend to have more compassion, whereas people who have had comfortable lives, I know there's research that shows that people who have positions of power tend to have less compassion. So this way that karma puts us at the bottom of society sometimes, at the top of society sometimes, it gives us a variety of experiences and it gives us a variety of suffering, which means we can empathize with people in different situations because we've been there. And this develops in us compassion. Of course, it's described in Hare Krishna theology that you don't have to learn the hard way, but the unfortunate reality is that most of us are thick and do not learn from the gentle lessons, and inevitably, many of us need to suffer a little bit in order to gain the wisdom and purification we need to advance on our journey. Now, it may seem as if karma isn't always working. We can see people with a particular bad mentality going through immense suffering, and it might appear as if the suffering is not benefiting them in any way, as if they are continuing or even doubling down in their bad mentality despite all the suffering. Or we might even think that the suffering is fueling their bad mentality. One way we can explain this is to say that just because some people are stubborn and slow to learn does not mean that the karmic situation they're in isn't the one they need and they just happen to not be taking advantage of it. Another way we can explain this is to say that the slice of their life that we're looking at is just not a long enough one in order to see the true impact of the suffering on their journey of transformation. An important thing to take note of in this worldview is the immense amount of time we have to get things right on our journey. We have many, many lifetimes. So just because it looks like someone is suffering now and not reforming their character does not mean that that suffering isn't shaping their character in a way that will ultimately lead to some transformation. We have the English idiom, the straw that broke the camel's back, to refer to the concept of so many things piling up and seemingly having no impact until it reaches a tipping point and the dam breaks. One useful analogy we can use for this is bridge collapses. A notable case here is the Morandi Bridge in Italy, which tragically collapsed in 2018, killing 43 people. It's thought that corrosion of the steel cables created structural weakness. Of course, this corrosion isn't something that happened on the day the bridge collapsed. It happened over a period of time. And then at one point, the bridge no longer had enough strength to hold itself up and gave way. We could compare this to a bad mentality which we need to give up, or a good mentality which we need to adopt, where the things holding us in that bad mentality are weakened and weakened in a way which is undetectable. But then at some point, it all gives way and a transformation takes place. So just because somebody doesn't look like they're learning anything from the tribulations life is throwing at them doesn't mean that the things they're going through won't ultimately contribute to some transformation. So just to quickly repeat this idea, because I think it's an important one, I perform a particular action caused by a particular mentality that I have. And I get a reaction suited to reform that mentality. And I still have that mentality now to some degree. So I'm still in need of that kind of reformation. All right, that will do it for this video. My next video, as I said before, will be responding to victim blaming objections. And then in future videos, I might just do a third video where I clump the rest of the objections together, such as the identity ones and the memory ones. So if you want to see more of this stuff, be sure to subscribe, support the channel and the algorithm by hitting the like button. Give me your objections and thoughts down in the comments, and I'll take those into consideration when putting future videos together on the subject, and I'll be sure to respond. So thank you for the view. I'll see you in the next one. Hare Krishna.